Welcome back. When you enlist in the military, you commit to a certain amount of time. In marriage, that lifelong commitment can unexpectedly come to an end. If you're filing for divorce, attorneys Shannon Boudreaux and Kevin Hunter with Boudreaux Hunter Associates explain why it's best to go through the process with a lawyer well-versed in military divorces. Shannon and Kevin, as you know, law is complicated, but especially family law because it's also emotional. And for our purposes today, what also matters is where you work. Are you in the military? So state law and local procedures govern. However, federal status and military can enter the equation.
Correct. Yeah, there's definitely some instances, where federal law would be supportive of either the spouse or the military member. The Civilman Service Relief Act. So if they're deployed, you can't really initiate a proceeding, so they would have a stay. But there's also, federal laws that protect spouses' benefits.
All right. And also, Shannon, where you file, correct?
That does matter. You can file in the location that you're stationed. You can file in the location of your home jurisdiction.
Home of record, yeah.
Your home of record. You might not want to file overseas. You might want to try to keep that filing within the United States because you could run into some problems with maybe U.S. courts recognizing a divorce overseas.
All right. Also, access to legal advice. Service members can have some access to legal advice, or is that limited in some way?
It's limited in certain respects, but they have each installation, post, base, whichever service you're in, they'll have a legal assistance office which is staffed with JAGs, Judge Advocate Generals, who are lawyers, but they may not be licensed in that particular state and jurisdiction. So if you are going to proceed with a divorce, they can't represent you. It has to be a civilian attorney.
Yeah, this is another reason right here of why it's important to get lawyers who specialize, as you all do, in this, because there's another thing, the Service Members Civil Relief Act. There are things to be aware of when you file. What does that act say?
Well, the act protects the servicemen, or service member, man or woman. So if they get deployed, it's not just limited to a divorce, but like, for example, if you have an apartment and you're not around and something happens with your pay of rent, it creates an automatic stay for that service member so that they don't come back to an apartment and be like, oh, well, you got evicted. Or in a divorce situation, it would be, I'm divorced and I didn't have a say. I didn't know about it or anything like that. So if they're deployed or if they're restricted on their duties, it protects them.
All right. There's also the Ununiformed Services Former Spouse Protection Act.
Mm-hmm. That act basically is for the spouse, and depending upon the length of the marriage, length of service, there are some benefits that they could receive that would be maybe permanent or for a period of time. The classic example is what's called the 20-20-20 rule. So 20 years of service, 20 years of marriage, that it allows, for that spouse to get some level of maybe commissary benefits or base exchange benefits, medical benefits, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad was in the military. I know that we were going from country to country all the time, and you touched on earlier how you might not want to file when you're overseas, but if you're stuck overseas, how do you handle that?
You can still file for divorce. So if you are overseas, the military allows you to have a home of record, or what's called a home of record. So whether it be the spouse or the military member, you can actually still file in the jurisdiction that is your home of record and proceed, even if you're stationed abroad. That's obviously difficult, but I have actually represented, he was not a military member, but he was part of an embassy, which is treated very similarly. He was stationed in Cairo, and his wife hadn't been back here very long. They hadn't established jurisdiction like a Texas resident would have to, but we were able to proceed with their divorce.
All right, Shannon, just in this first few minutes that we've spoken, it becomes very clear that you got to have somebody who's an expert in this. And so, a lot of people will say, oh, I have a friend who's an attorney. Speak to the importance of having not just a friend who's an attorney, but somebody who specializes in family law and then knows all the details that we're talking about right now.
Well, that's a good point. I specialize in family law. I've been doing this for 17 years. Kevin is the military expert. He is former Air Force, so thank you for your service. and then also doing family law. He knows a lot more about this area than I do. I've never been in the military, but I've been doing family law for 17 years. So it's very important to make sure that you find somebody that practices family law exclusively, and then also might have that extra knowledge, that military background.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Kevin, for your service.
Oh, thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
And to get in touch with Boudreaux Hunter and Associates and for more information, call 713-333-4430. That's 713-333-4430, or visit bhlawtexas.com.